Oh, that's Welcome, everyone. We're going to be getting started in just a minute. Thanks for coming in early.
Hi, Josh. I can hear you.
Hello, Robert. Welcome. And it's now 2 Central. So welcome, everyone. I see lots of familiar faces and lots of familiar names in our participants list. Feel free to ask questions. If you'd like to test something, I don't have an agenda. David Paskin is also here, so he'll be co-hosting with me as well. Jeff had something to attend to, so he will not be here today. So doing just the usual substitute work. There is not a specific agenda, so feel free to suggest anything Zoom related that you'd like to test. Welcome, Peter.
Good afternoon, Josh. You are our guest host for this week?
As it turns out, yes. Yes, I am. As a matter of fact. Yeah, Jeff had a last minute thing pop up, so I don't have an agenda. There has been a lot of exciting recent revelations by Zoom, so there's plenty of things we could speak about. I know one of those things is the new iterations of ZoomOSC. We're waiting for a ZoomISO to come out as well.
Yeah, that's the one I'm more interested in, to be honest with you.
For the ZoomISO client?
Yeah,
I am as well. Yeah, have you been familiar with the traditional forms of controlling those mediums, Bitfocus Companion, or any of the OSC?
Oh yeah, I've got a Stream Deck XL right next to me and stuff like that. So
nice.
I unfortunately have been fallen victim to the office hours investment stream for the last 2.5 years.
All right. So you have all the requisite gear.
I have
an
ISO Pro Extreme. I have a Mix Pre 3. I have the XL. I have the 6K Pro downstairs, and it's in its protective Pelican case for when I take it out.
Nice.
I'm not using it for this right now. I have a. It's perfectly good. But granted, it's 10 years old. It's a Sony AX100 Handycam, which I find it's actually got Sony color science is pretty good. And
Yes.
the autofocus is handy because I can move around and it doesn't lose its mind too much. Whereas the Black Magic camera, if you move just a little bit, it gets a little unhappy at you.
Nice. There's Lois. Very good. Yeah, the Sony cameras are pretty good with the focus, so I can cover my eyes. There you
Yep.
go. They do a pretty good job.
Yeah. I mean, Josh, you've never seen, where I sit.
There you go. Behind the scenes.
Yeah. So you can see the camera right there, sitting in the center of the ring light.
Poking through your ring light. There you go. Pull my second screen up. Yeah. Fantastic. Hello, Lois. Welcome.
You're on mute,
Nice.
Lois.
Hello, Jeff. How you doing?
Well,
Are you our
Jeff has-
surrogate Jeff today?
Sure. I can be Jeff today. Sure. Yeah. Only in name only. Yes.
Well, you're the
so-
host, so you must be.
I must be. Yeah. I'm Jeff by default. I'm not the Jeff that you want. I'm the Jeff that you have. Yes. But yeah, so we don't have an agenda today, so we're welcome to test anything that is weighing on your Zoom production or something you'd like to see demonstrated. A few of us have been sitting in office hours with Elle, who has been teaching us some Isadora and some ZoomOSC connections. So that's looking really interesting. I'm just a novice at the moment, just getting my feet wet with it. But I know a few in our community have sat in on some of those lessons, and it's great. On it's a free class on, was it Wednesdays? Yeah, Wednesdays right after the office hours show. You can get your feet wet with Isadora, which is a high-level programming language. And since our community is starting to really take interest in ZoomOSC and ZoomISO, it's helpful to be able to have something that'll make the program do what you want, either as a chat bot and putting out messages to individuals, greeting them, and the announced features that we're looking forward to. Some of the new premium features are actually being able to manipulate breakout rooms. So looking forward to that. I'm sure
That's it's actually a nodal programming language in reality. Unfortunately, my background is such that I go the other direction by default. Usually I started off in machine and assembler language. So I think of me as, Gibson, counterpart. I think in terms of the real low level stuff. How can I move
Nice.
the bits around with
So
the
you're
least
one of those
number of
guys that
instructions?
can-
With the
can
least
build
number
it
of
in a-
instructions.
You're one of those guys that can build an assembly before I can get it done in the node, right? Yeah. So
Yeah. Yes,
what's going on,
Lois.
Lois?
So Wednesday after office hours is Ken Jordan's website lab working in WordPress. So I don't know when the thing is that you're talking about, but it ain't Wednesday after office hours.
Good catch, Lois. Yes, actually it's Thursday, right? So Ken does his thing on Wednesday. He's been doing some Mondays, but I don't think that's a regular thing for
One.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one, and I think he got
He
accidentally
he
scheduled for a second
accidentally
one.
did a second one, but he's not doing, that's not a regular thing. And there aren't any more scheduled.
Right. So yeah, Thursdays after the office hours show. Yeah, there's a open
Is David
class.
really here? Because I've been seeing him on Facebook. He looks like he's in Europe.
Oh, I don't know. Well, I mean, when you're on Zoom, you really have to define where here is. Our geographical
Well,
location tends to weigh less on us than where our here is at the moment.
This is true. I'm just thinking he's with his family in Europe. I'm just surprised if he is really with us. That's what I meant.
Okay, gotcha. I did see the message that Jeff put in the in the Zoom Discord, Office Hours Zoom Discord. He mentioned that myself and David would be here for today. So perhaps
Okay.
we will see David pop in a little bit later. I see your hands up, Lois. What you got?
So I came with a question, and that is, I would like to get a definitive answer about what is original sound and what does it mean when it's on or when it's off. Practical things of what it means when it's on or off. What's the effect? But what is original sound? Why do they call it that?
Good question, Lois. We've actually had some escapades just yesterday about some original sound.
And
So
I said,
Zoom-
Robert, I'm sorry.
Got you. Did you have a thought, Robert? Do you want to weigh
Yeah,
in?
I think we just need to discriminate between original sound in the interpretation, which is one thing, and the original sound that you started to talk about, Josh.
Can you make that distinction, Robert?
Yeah, with interpretation, the original sound is the sound that you get from the speakers, like we can hear now. Yeah. So in interpretation language, we call it the floor. In other words, if you're in a conference room, you can hear what's being spoken on the floor. And you can, when you have the interpretation switched on, you can switch it off the original speaker. Yeah, so you lose the original sound coming from the floor. So if I switched off the original sound in interpretation, I wouldn't hear any of you speaking. I'd only hear the interpreter.
But
Gotcha.
That's not my question.
Robert, she's talking about the
Zoom.
upper left-hand corner of Zoom.
I know,
Right,
I just
right.
said we just need to make a distinction between the two because the same word is used.
Understood. Then that's interesting to me. And I'm not that familiar with the interpretation side of things. Robert, before we get to Lois's application of the original sound, maybe you could expand on that a little bit. So is that the terminology that Zoom is using for interpretation? It actually calls it original sound?
It actually says original speaker.
Original speaker.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it
Gotcha.
refers to all of the people who are speaking in the meeting.
Interesting. Yeah. And I know, Robert, you're somewhat of an expert in the interpretation on Zoom. What's the limitation of how many channels you can get for interpretation? Is this an add-on that you negotiate with Zoom?
It's built-in functionality that you get from, it's in the business license, or if you have a pro license and you buy a webinar license, then the webinar has the interpretation in it. So you can actually, if you have it under the same account, you get the interpretation in your pro license. So it's like a little workaround.
Yeah. All right. We lost the original questioner here for a second.
Our original questioner for listening to the original speaker. Sorry, Lois. We
Lois,
wandered off.
are you
Bit of a tangent there.
yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
perhaps she'll be.
Because I don't, I was one of those people early on that had to consistently fight the Zoom definition of original sound back in the early days of office hours. So now we're back to your question, Lois.
Yes.
So fundamentally, and people I'm sure will jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but original, no, I'm going to start off by saying the way it works now is original sound on says it's going to take exactly what your microphone input is, and Zoom is going to accept it and is not going to do any sort of volume adjustment, noise reduction, any of that matter. It's just going to take it as is. And so if you have a noisy room, like I always, this time of year at 100 degrees Fahrenheit, the air conditioner is always running in my house. If I had turned original sound on Zoom, you would hear the air conditioner running. because I have original sound off, Zoom is basically doing noise reduction and taking it out. You don't hear the fan noise, right? Go ahead.
Is this separate from the not hearing what the speaker, the sound from the computer and the sound from the speaker, and it's adjusting?
That's echo. That's echo.
Is
That's
that
echo.
a different thing?
Yeah, that's a different thing. That's echo cancellation.
And the original sound does not affect echo cancellation.
It's been so
It's a
long since
feature.
it's a feature.
Yeah. So to expand on a little bit about what Peter was saying, if you do not see, if you look in your browser, or sorry, in the Zoom app, and if you don't see a toggle switch in the top left-hand side, usually right by the meeting information shield, that says original sound, and it'll have its state, whether it's on or off. If you don't see that, then you can go into your settings, which I'm showing on my screen now, and you can tick this box, which says show in meeting option to enable original sound. And let's see, there's a little explanation there. It says this option automatically disables Zoom noise suppression, removes high pass filtering, and removes automatic gain control. It is recommended for playing music and for studio-like environments with higher quality microphones, speakers, or audio interfaces. It is not recommended for use in noisy environments or for general meetings use. So what Zoom has done, this is a feature in which you have to turn the feature on to turn off the processing that Zoom does to your audio. Now, in most cases, the processing that Zoom does to your audio, and I have to say, it does a pretty fantastic job. It'll take out a lot of the noise, and by default, it'll have the echo cancellation that takes care of it. So people that are accustomed to having open speakers, the reason why your sound doesn't wind up back into the microphone and then repeat it out with an echo is that Zoom is listening for that, and it's trying to remove that echo cancellation. Now that's something that, if you notice, there are some settings underneath this music and professional audio subheading inside the menu. There's 3 settings there. One is high fidelity music mode. There's an explanation there. It says it optimizes Zoom audio for the highest quality music. It can also increase CPU utilization and consume greater network bandwidth. For best results, an Ethernet connection, not Wi-Fi, is strongly recommended. So there's less of Zoom's ability to manipulate the audio in using sync, and it will require more bandwidth. Now, the echo cancellation is what you mentioned, Lois. So that's where you have open speakers, and Zoom knows that the sound coming out of your speakers, it doesn't want to bring back into the microphone so that you won't hear it, but everyone else in the room. So the rule is if there's echo on, or if someone's turned this setting off and are using original sound, and people are saying, I'm hearing myself back. Well, the rule is if you're causing the problem, you won't hear anything. But if everyone else is complaining except for you, chances are you're the one that's feeding everyone else's sound back at them.
All right. And just to share a little story about this, and I don't know if you remember this, Josh. When office hours first started, we were all getting caught up in the fact that they had the meaning of that switch in the upper left-hand corner the opposite way around.
Right. Yeah, it used to be that it was, whether it was on or off was a philosophical point of view as far as what you meant about whether that feature was enabled or not. So what it means, I'll go over the last stereo audio, and then we can talk about the practical use cases of when to use this option. It says this option says the stereo audio enables Zoom to encode audio in stereo. So a stereo capable microphone or audio interface is necessary. It will increase CPU utilization and consume greater network bandwidth. So already they've given you some of the caveats to not selecting this. And Zoom is a service that, it's ubiquitous across a large number of not the best ideal circumstances for meetings. And part of Zoom's success is that what they do naturally for everyone works out okay for most people. They make sure that your sound's you're not feeding other people's sound from their speakers back in from their echo cancellation. They're taking out the hum. If I turn my original sound on, you'll probably hear what I think is pretty quiet. Actually, I'll turn it on right now. You may hear I have a heat pump fan. It's about 7 feet behind me, and it's just barely audible to me, but you'll probably hear it. And that means that before I turned original sound on, Zoom was dutifully removing that repetitive noise of the motor on it. So when you would want to use it is some of us that have spent extra attention to our sound. We have a dedicated audio device, a dedicated microphone. We would like to take control of our sound, particularly if we're feeding in audio. Just prior to the start, I fed in some remanufactured Zoom Test Kitchen audio at the start of our discussion. That was borrowed from Jeff's own stream. So it's a last minute thing there. So turning on original sound, if I would not have turned on original sound, Zoom would start attacking that audio bed and thinking that it's noise, because Zoom has no way of distinguishing what's music and what's noise. So if you're looking to share music and you want that fidelity to come through and you don't want Zoom to touch it, leave it alone and play it as the artist intended, as opposed to what Zoom thinks might be noise, which is pretty much all of it. He'll try to cancel it all. You turn on the original sound, which means you have to watch out for the caveats that you have. You'll have a higher CPU utilization. You've got to watch out for what else you're feeding through the microphone if you have that. The other thing that the original sound is, you'll notice that this automatically adjust microphone volume box is by default it's ticked, which means you allow Zoom, if it thinks that you're too loud, it'll quiet you. If it thinks that you're too quiet, it'll raise the volume. By unticking this, that means you can take this volume knob and slide it to the appropriate position, which is helpful, for someone that's gone that extra step, has the extra equipment, or is trying to feed in a consistent level of audio into the meeting. Turning off what Zoom does automatically helps you to deliver what you're trying to deliver, and it'll keep Zoom from trying to pick it apart as noise. Does that help a little bit, Lois?
So I would like to make an experiment at this time. This is me with original sound on, and I'm talking. Now I'm going to switch that. Let's see if I can switch it to off. Now original sound is off. Do you hear any difference at all in my situation?
We do.
Which is better? This one is better, or this one is better?
So right now, I don't hear a lot of background noise or distractions or fans in your background. So having original sound on, we do hear a higher fidelity Lois voice in there.
Right.
The difference is subtle. And
it's meant to be subtle. It's meant to be subtle.
It's meant to be. Well, yeah, they're trying to mess with the overall sound of your voice as little as possible by trying to remove the things that shouldn't be there and try to keep in the things that, like your voice. The problem is that the challenge of that is that, the noises occupy some of the same frequency space as your voice. So they try to cut out just the frequencies that are noise and some are not. But it'll sound a little more boxy by comparison. And I say Zoom does a pretty good job. So the difference isn't dramatic, I would say. And as soon as you're, so you might get, I would say a word of caution, you might get a slight increase in the fidelity of sound, but over time, we tend to remember it's a psychological thing. We tend to remember the bad things about it. So like that little nice improvement in sound, if you're singing or doing something vocally in a Zoom meeting, you definitely want to have that on and have that extra touch. But if you're just using spoken word, even in the, I have a fairly soundproofed room, but again, like you can hear my fan when I leave it on. I would say that most of the time you're better off, when in doubt, leave the original sound off and let Zoom do its thing and cover it. Because as soon as your nice voice, as soon as some fan starts playing or some birds chirping or some things going, that advantage, that little small advantage we have with the original sound, in my opinion, wouldn't be worth the sacrifice of clean audio. And consistency, I think, is important. Robert?
Yeah, there's another thing about original sound. I know, Lois, you started using OBS for a load of stuff. If you're delivering the sound from OBS over a virtual cable, then it's good to switch the original sound on, because you get the stereo effects and you get the good quality sound that's coming from the video that you're playing back.
More important to that point, Robert. I mean, I use Memo Live on my Mac and feed it in, and I've got, I don't know how many of you know what a bosun's pipe is.
Mm-hmm.
And it exactly, it's a very high pitched, loud noise done properly, and I have recordings of it. If I leave original sound off and try and play it from Memo Live direct into Zoom clamps it down. It literally does, it almost becomes unusable at that point. So to Robert's point, if you're using, I don't care if it's Ecamm or Memo Live or vMix, if you're feeding the audio directly into Zoom, turn original sound on.
So I don't use OBS for sound. I haven't learned how to do that yet, and it hasn't been a necessity yet, but maybe I will someday. But what I'm hearing from what you all are saying is that it sounds a little bit better, original sound on, if I'm in a quiet space. When it gets hot and I want to run the fans, then I should turn original sound off. And the things that you had me checking in this settings box, it says enable these options when original sound is on, which makes it sound like if original sound is on, I have to do something extra to get echo cancellation. I've checked it, so echo cancellation will be there.
That's correct.
So if I turned it off, echo cancellation is there already. I don't have to check anything, and it's only if it's on. So if echo cancellation's on, then the only thing I have to worry about are my fans. Is that pretty accurate for practicality?
Or in my case, the other day, the arborist was trimming a tree, and it actually did a reasonably good job of taking out the sound of the chainsaw that was about 50 feet away. Mm-hmm. It didn't take it out as far as my ears were concerned, and it was bothering the you-know-what out of me, but nobody else knew there was a chainsaw there.
Good. Thank you. That was a very useful discussion. Robert.
Sorry, one more thing. Josh actually read it out. Original sound, when it's on, takes up more bandwidth. So if there's an issue with bandwidth, then you shouldn't switch it on.
Yeah. And Lois, you say you don't use OBS for sound. Do you use OBS for playback of any sort of video?
Yeah, we had we didn't have a media manager last night, and the guest needed a slideshow, so I made a slideshow and I replaced my face with the slide when he was talking, which is fine because I didn't have to be on the same time as the slide did. But I used OBS for that, and they were slides. We got down to the 2 videos. I clicked a video, I played it on my computer, and they heard it. So I think they were just hearing it from the sound of my computer.
There is a checkbox on share screen that says, make sure you're sharing the audio and it will work.
This wasn't share screen. This is OBS. I did not share screen.
Yeah.
Well, then
so
you were
sharing
taking
it back with her video and her
But
regular
that
video and audio
says,
feed.
with OBS, that says the audio was coming for that video was coming through OBS then as
No.
well, right?
No, the audio is all turned off. There's a big red X over the microphone part, and no audio is coming out of the OBS at this time.
Interesting.
That doesn't sound right, because if you're playing the film in OBS, then the only way to get the sound out is from OBS.
I'm playing the film in my keynote presentation on my computer. The video, the image is going out through OBS. The sound is simply the sound into my microphone.
I got you.
Ah,
So she's sharing the video from OBS only.
Yeah.
I got you.
We'll have to have
Visual.
some of us will have to have a conversation with you at some point, because I will tell you because I do it all the time. I slam a full-fledged video with audio from, in my case, Memo Live, but it could be OBS, straight into Zoom, and it's fat, dumb, and happy at that point.
And you're not sharing screen, you're doing it
I'm
in
not
your
sharing
brain.
screen.
Uh-huh.
I'm not sharing screen
Yeah.
at all.
Well, the other thing too is, Lois, audio hijack and loopback do also benefit from original sound as well. So if you're sharing it from a PC source direct, where
She's on a PC, not a Mac, though, right?
I'm on a Mac.
Oh, you're on
She's
a
on
Mac.
a Mac.
Okay.
yeah, and it's good to note too. So what was the point? Yeah.
Josh, you're still sharing screen. Is there something on there you want us to be looking at?
Me. So,
So is there, so the visuals going through OBS and then out to Zoom, and the audio is going directly from into my microphone and out to Zoom. Is there a problem with synchronization, or if I'm using OBS to put my face out from the camera through OBS out to Zoom, am I going to have, and then you hear me?
So you asked about a sync problem between
Whether
the audio and
the
video?
voice and the lips are going to be different?
So the part where you start to have an issue with audio sync is when you send audio and video through two separate channels.
Right.
That can be an issue.
OBS is
Yeah,
for visual and the microphone for audio.
you can. Yeah, and the tools, I believe you use audio hijack.
I don't use it. I mean, I record things and stuff, but it's not on. It's my microphone directly into Zoom.
So right now, the only audio that you're getting actually is sort of an unintended one where the microphone just happens to pick up the sound from the speakers.
We tested it. They said they could hear it, so I didn't go any further.
So in that case, having the original sound on would help that contamination that we're using as an audio chain better to propagate into the Zoom meeting. And I think I remembered what I was going to say. So when you share, our typical sharing of media in Zoom is through the Zoom tools of sharing the screen.
Share screen,
And as we know, that puts Zoom in a sharing screen mode, which has a priority of, it's one of those things, when we do things as producers, we tend to want to get around the usual avenues of doing things like sharing media, audio, or video. And there's different modes into doing that. Now, of course, you can opt to share just the sound portion of your computer, which could be helpful if you've either got already a solution for the video that you have, you're using OBS, so you don't need to share, you don't wish to move the meeting into that shared mode. You wish to stay in the regular mode where people can choose whether they want to look at gallery or video or speaker view, and let them control it. Or in the case of your program, Lois, you don't want to change things for the back end to be able to process your show. So what we wind up doing when we start plugging in an external microphone or start using a program like OBS or Ecamm, we are augmenting the two channels that are regular inputs into Zoom, which is our microphone and our camera, right? So if you have a simple device, that microphone, that camera is built in. You simply have to select it. Or if you have a simple enough device, there's only one of them and there's nothing to select. So it just simply takes the camera and microphone that you have. Once you start plugging in components, typically to a computer or device that you can add things onto it, that's whenever we have a little more options, and we also have ways of messing things up once we've augmented with things.
When when Zoom is in control of choosing which camera, camera A or camera B, then Zoom is in control and there's no extra bits involved other than there's two cameras to choose from. And so there shouldn't be any additional problems, right? And the same with the microphone. If I've got a microphone or I've got a headset, it's Zoom controlled, so that shouldn't make a problem, should it? It's when I have a different processing going on, like OBS or NDI or something. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Or
When
if
you
you're
say
doing,
problems, are you referring to the original sound issues or just general?
Or
So-
or sync or whatever.
Right. Yeah, well, the original camera and microphone, as far as sync goes, will be connecting it from a single device, which is your phone. So there's not two different devices where you're taking in audio from one place and video from another place. They're both devices that are directly attached to your phone or iPad
Or computer.
or laptop or computer. Yeah. As far as problems are concerned, I guess depends on what problems you have. Typically, Zoom will give you the out of the box experience with your camera. There is an exception if you have an iPad, or I believe some of the newer Macs have what's called center stage. So this is an additional feature that Apple enables Zoom to do, and you can turn on and off in the settings. In fact, we were doing some testing in office hours just prior to this. And what that does is it does its own little zooming in, cropping in on your face. It'll try to keep your face in the center of the image. And it starts from a wide image. Now, if you had the interesting thing about that, some of the testing we did just prior, we can investigate it if you feel like it. But a gentleman that came into after hours wanted to know just what the experience would be in running Zoom on the browser on his iPad. And the experience there that we saw is that Zoom did not have the access to the center stage option for the built-in camera. And so where the center stage is a feature where Apple is constantly zooming in and following the face of the image, the out-of-the-box experience with the browser is it just sees this big, wide camera field of view. So your out-of-the-box experience, would you have a problem with? That's why I say would you have a problem with? It depends on what you're expecting. Do you want the big, wide field of view? Do you prefer the zoomed-in typical view? Or the center stage option, if you enable it, is something to where Apple will enable Zoom to follow your face around if you go from the left or to the right.
And this is an option in the Zoom settings, or this is an option in the Apple settings?
Well, it only applies if you have a compatible device from Apple that has this. It's probably within the last 2 years.
Okay,
Yeah,
doesn't apply.
it's a feature function in the latest versions of
Okay.
the iPads and then the latest Mac Pros.
Okay.
Some people find it truly annoying.
Right. Yeah, there's some would-be features. So taking more control of your system is, as many of us as producers that do, we don't feed simply the stock image in. If I'm the reason why I'm able to do this is because I'm feeding what Zoom thinks is a camera in, but I can put graphics in or do a specifically manipulated image through some type of vision mix software like OBS or Ecamm or vMix or what have you.
In my
So
case,
you-
that's what's putting the clock in the upper left-hand corner.
Mhm. Right. So
Right.
you have the nice thing about this is that, we talk about here in the test kitchen, we're all about the new features that Zoom updates enable their clients to use. So your vanilla users that just install the app on their device and use it out of the box. It's nice whenever Zoom, allows you to add some lower thirds in the Zoom events. There's a option to, in some of the features where you can have graphics and make up your own little lower thirds boxes. And that's nice when Zoom allows you to do it. And then you'll be able to do it within the window of what, the different options and parameters. You might be able to select to put it over here. You might be able to put it over there. But once you've taken control of your either video or your audio stream, then you can pretty much do whatever your add-on software's capability of or your imagination is capable of. So basically Zoom thinks that it's just looking at a camera, whereas I can show you any image of mine, or the audio stream where I can play music or put other type of audio through, and it thinks it's listening to a video participant in voice. Go ahead, Robert.
But just correct me if I'm wrong, Josh. You're feeding your microphone into whatever video app you're using, be it vMix, OBS, or whatever.
Actually, I'm not. So I could incur a sync issue in that I have an audio interface that's connected to my particular microphone, requires an audio interface over USB, and it goes into my microphone. And so I've actually selected, it gets a little more convoluted than that. I'm using a voice meter potato. So it's a software switcher that can route my audio. And so I'm actually selecting in Zoom to take the specific virtual channel that I've assigned to my microphone on voice meter that it's getting from an audio interface that's connected to my microphone. And as far as the
can you do a clap
visuals,
test?
so
Yeah, he's just a slight off. Slight
off. Yeah. And the thing about the audio and video too is that I could probably use a little audio delay, which I can. There is a way in the software I can add a few, like maybe 10, 20 milliseconds of delay for the audio. The one thing is that Zoom tends to play with the video feed a little more in the temporal, more than it does in the audio, it seems. So sometimes you'll even see that in some of the best folks have a struggle with that. Haney, I see your hand up. Did you have a comment?
I
We
do.
also have
First of all,
Wait, sorry, Josh, we also have a question in the chat when we get to it.
Thanks, David.
thanks everyone. I really appreciate this forum, and first time here. I'm glad you're all here, and I've got a question for you about the webinar branding that Zoom has recently introduced. I've been playing around with that. I've hosted a couple of webinars with it so far live, and I discovered that the colors sometimes between the background and the virtual background, the Zoom meeting background, or the webinar the webinar background, even though they're the same color values in Photoshop, when I've forced the virtual background onto the different speakers, the color doesn't always match. And it's a function of some of the different devices. Sometimes on tablets, for example, the color is off. On a computer, whether it's a Mac or PC, the color seems to be on. And then also when you're broadcasting to the attendees or to YouTube, I use Restream to go to YouTube and Facebook simultaneously. Sometimes the color is off there. Also, additional to that, the lower thirds branding, the title and the description of the different speakers does not appear in the recording. It does appear when I'm sending it to third-party broadcasters, but it doesn't appear in the recording itself. Any thoughts or input on that?
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Robert.
I think I concur with you in terms of the recordings. You don't get the branding in the recordings at all. In terms of the difference in the color matches between the background and any other sort of branding that you're using, I've seen that as well. But my understanding is that the background is being rendered at the servers, and the what you call the lower thirds, or the name tags, are being rendered locally. And I think that's where the difference is coming in. But I've seen the same thing. I agree with you. There is a difference. And I can't tell you where it's coming, how to match it, because you match it on one computer and it's different on another computer.
Yeah, I also noticed that the recording picks up the webinar background, but YouTube and YouTube and Facebook, what is being streamed, does not. It just has the speaker. If I'm using spotlighting, for example, the spotlight appears to the attendees with the webinar background, and the recording also shows it, but what is streaming does not. I assume that these are all little bugs that Zoom is going to be working through.
I really can't talk about the streaming because I never use the built-in streaming on Zoom like Josh is using now. I always stream from a third-party app that I'm capturing on a separate computer. So I haven't seen that, so I don't know.
Right, that's the best way to capture it. You know exactly what you're getting. Yeah.
So I can't tell you about any of that streaming stuff. My solution, if I were in your situation, is to have an alternate color for the bugs or the lower thirds or whatever, different than the background color, so you don't have to match it exactly, and it will still look good. And it's just, it's a design change that you do so that there isn't a problem. It's sort of like when you built a website and you use those color safe web colors. This was back in the 90s. And then everybody looked pretty much the same. Right? But yeah, you can't control local computers.
Yeah, I went through the trouble of using the event graphic that they use for the promotions to be the event graphic for Countdown right before, like when the webinar went live and the attendees were all coming in. I had that event graphic with the background, but if I do that with Spotlight, it actually shrinks it, so there's a double image. So what I did was work through YouTube, trimmed out that little portion that would sort of superimpose positionally, and went through all that trouble, and then when it went live, the colors were off.
Yeah, I wonder if even the bit depth is something of a disparity from the device to device. So, yeah. And when you say there's a difference, there's enough to where you put one next to the other, you can tell
Well,
that it's different.
you can see
Yeah.
that even in office hours, Josh. I know I've commented a few times that, and Alex's image is particularly prone to this. When you have the gallery view and you see both what's being sent to YouTube versus what Zoom is seeing versus what I'm seeing on my TV above my head displaying YouTube, his gray is different each time. The colors, the blacks get crushed, if nothing else.
Go ahead, Lois.
Y'all won't like this, but if we go back to the 90s and we use those color safe, web safe colors, then there is less problem with, can this device see this color or that color? Because there's so few of them that they are included in all of the devices. As far as I know, I don't know of any device that can't show it accurately. Now, what, Peter?
I was going to say the catch with this one, though, because I won't we'll be nice and we won't ask your age and you don't ask my age, but I used to do color safe colors also in the 90s. And I was already working for 30 years at that point. This is not web colors. This is in fact a computer algorithm that is analyzing the bit stream and saying, what am I putting out? And that's why I made the point about Alex's colors being crushed. It was obvious. It's obvious on his stream. It is in fact the computer reanalyzing the color every time it sees it. It's not a hex pattern at that point.
But the thing that you created has a color, a specific color, and you can describe it in hex pattern. Even though, so in a live situation like this, there is no fixed color because it's live. And it's just a camera, it's capturing that. But if you have actually created an icon, if you have actually created a page or something that is you made the color. That's all I'm saying is you can choose colors.
But that's that was my point is Zoom doesn't recognize it as a fixed color. Zoom will not recognize if you code in, I'll pick it, sky blue, which is one of the safe colors. If you code that in, Zoom will still mess with it. It doesn't care. It flat doesn't care because it thinks everything's a video signal.
Okay.
Right. I wish it worked the way you did because it would have saved me a few pain and agony. But I finally took your other advice, which you gave a few minutes ago, is make sure that the background and the bug are far enough apart that nobody cares.
Right. Yeah. And I'm hearing machine language experience speaking in there.
Yeah, you heard my comment earlier about what I used to. Yeah, so I'm sorry. I worked for the IBM company for 40 years. So
yeah, I come from printing background and have sort of transitioned to video and online events as well. So I bring all that confusion with color between RGB and CMYK and what is visible on screen and what is printable. So I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish it really did work the other way around, but nobody's figured out how to do that. As far as Zoom is concerned, everything's a video signal. By the way, that goes for Teams or any other system you're working with, unfortunately.
Lois, did you have a thought?
You're on
still
mute.
muted, Lois.
Are we ready for another question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Before we move on,
There's one
before
in
we move on.
the chat.
Okay. Yeah. Before we get to that, is it Arthur's you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Great.
So
I will say, is it Haney? Sorry, am I saying that right? Haney. Thank you. Yeah, it is nice to know. A lot of us coming from different production backgrounds, it's good to know the pitfalls and the traps of the platforms that we use. Something that works in our heads and it sounds like it's a good idea to try until you put the same colors in and expect the same colors out. I've seen different composition techniques like this too, where I've seen it in certain events where you'd have like a virtual background that had a certain themed color, and then it was used to comp over a source that had the same scene color. And I could see where that being able to use that is sort of a hack around using a differential key, using Zoom's differential key to put them in a larger composite. And so understanding what might be the catches from that, we can set, at least if we can't solve it with the tools that we have on available, and at least what Zoom's using, we can at least be wise to that effect and advise our clients that this is the expectation of, how close we could match colors or how seamlessly things are going to be used, or start to look at other contribution methods if that's something that's more paramount importance over the friction, that the lack of friction that Zoom offers as a contribution service. Robert, do you have a thought?
Yeah. If once we've finished on the video issue, before we go on to the next topic, there's one more issue with the audio that I'd like to just address and comment on. I know I'm jumping backwards, but before we move on to the next topic.
Sure. So Lois did mention that Arthur had mentioned about the registration link for the other powers. For the other event, I'm assuming, Arthur, that you're talking about the free Isadora class in After Hours. And I see Brandon has generously put the link down there to join. So there's an After Hours discussion where you can take advantage of that free education. So feel free to join.
Yeah,
Welcome.
this is just great. Yeah, I actually am a Zoom Gov administrator for my agency. So, so I've been, dealing with this for 2 years since the pandemic started, and a colleague mentioned this was great. And I run office hours for my agency to help my 150 license holders there. So, but you guys, I listened in last week, and you guys are way above where I was at in terms of I want to learn as much as I can to, become as good as I can with this, and also the ancillary products that are being used with it. So thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Welcome, Arthur. You're in the right spot. A lot of us are sharing our knowledge and our experience and our pain stories as well. So viable experience, especially if someone else can experience it for you. Lois, what's up? What's you got?
So I just want to follow up on this, and anytime anyone comes in and says, what's the link to After Hours? The way to get to After Hours is to join Office Hours to become part of that community. It's not something that is going to be just passed around wildly. So yeah, the way in is register for Office Hours and then read the message, because in there is the method to get into After Hours.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Lois. Fantastic. So was it Robert? Did you have the next topic for us?
Not so much the next topic, but just wanted to go back to the audio that Lois was talking about. One of the pitfalls when using the interpretation on Zoom is that if you do a share screen with a video, then the interpretation doesn't work. Now, what do I mean by this? Usually with the interpretation, what happens is when the interpreter starts speaking, the original speaker's audio goes down and the interpreter's voice is audible. If you do a screen share with audio, you're using the system volume, and so it doesn't go down. It's constantly up, and the users can't hear the interpreter because the system sound is usually slightly higher than the interpreter sound. So the only way to get around that is to actually feed it in through a third-party app. In other words, through OBS, and just imitate a user, and then the interpretation module works properly.
That's a nice tidbit for that, Robert. I think that kind of beckons back to some of us are familiar with the way that Zoom handles audio. So we talked about the default audio. So right now, the audio that I'm speaking into Zoom is in an audio channel. And I believe there are three possible audio channels that we can have. See, are you a visual person or are you an audio person? That was a test. So, right. So there's three different audio channels that Zoom can handle at once. So right now I'm speaking. So if Peter opened up his microphone and started speaking, you might hear my voice and Peter's voice together. But if David then interrupted
started
us,
talking at the same time,
you might be able to hear both of our voices.
3 or 4 of us going.
The problem is after you get past that 3 threshold, it's going to drop one of the participants and it's going to pick up yet another one. And this is a problem that you'll have if you try to use bad audio. It won't work after the third person has spoken, because it'll then, that channel that it thinks is a microphone, it's all well and good so long as it's not competed against. But once Zoom feels that you've spoken enough about your mumbling about singing some type of song, it's going to drop your audio, even if you're playing a bed, and it's going to switch to another audio section. And I think it's a similar relationship to the audio challenges that Robert spoke about with his interpretation channels. Sharing sound allows you to, whether it's a part of a video and audio share where you check the box to say share system sound, or whether you check the box for the advanced setting of Zoom to where you're only sharing the advanced setting to where you're only sharing the audio, which is a good option if you do want to put a bed that does not get interrupted and set it to a level that's below everyone's speaking volume. Then you can have a nice audio bed in your channel that won't get taken over after the third audio channel. Dave, do you have a thought?
Quick question, and this is probably for you, Robert. When I watch Netflix shows in other languages, I have the option sometimes to hear the show in the language that I understand. It's always terrible. The experience is always horrible. I would much prefer to listen to it in the original language and just have the captioning on. Can you talk a little bit about why someone might choose captions versus real-time translation, or vice versa?
It's a cultural thing, David. I find in different cultures, people have different preferences. Some people will absolutely refuse to have any second person speaking over the original speaker and will read the text, the subtitles. In Europe, the whole of Scandinavian countries will only read subtitles, for example. They will not tolerate any sort of overheard, a second voice in the background. While in the southern part of Europe, they will not read subtitles. I don't think it's a cultural thing. They're just not used to it. They've been brought up in an environment where all of the TV programs were dubbed, so they have always had the option of listening to the dubbed version. I find, because I've been playing with Otter a lot to get subtitles and then translating them and putting them back in, I find that in the office environment, people are choosing subtitles because the sound doesn't disturb anyone else. So you can actually attend a meeting and just watch the subtitles and read and follow the meeting, the discussion. But like I said, the only answer I have is that it's a cultural thing.
Thank you.
And Haney, did you have a thought?
Yeah, one of the ways we've been using interpretation is some of our events are live multi-site. I mean, this was something that we were doing before the pandemic, and it just sort of mushroomed during the pandemic, where we have different panelists from different locations across the globe, and members of the audience from different locations also across the globe, and we've been using the interpretation feature of Zoom very successfully that way. We have remote interpreters, and in some cases where one of the languages, particularly in our case, Chinese, Cantonese actually, we have the speaker and we use vMix to sort of combine the stream, and we have the interpreter at the bottom right corner with the different speakers up on the top, and it would be just like one-on-one. So a phrase in English, an interpretation in Cantonese, and during that interpretation, all the other interpreters have a chance to interpret. We try to do it without the Chinese interpretation, and some of the speakers were just, speaking so fast that the interpreters had a difficult time to keep up with them. So by breaking it up that way, we were able to use that. We don't use the captions, and it's been working very successfully. We've had, I believe somebody raised the question of how many interpretation languages Zoom offers as an option. It used to be 8. I think it's now up to either 11 or 13. And you can customize your own interpretation languages in the settings to actually brand them to whatever language you want, even if it's not there as part of the original list. So we have Tagalog, we have Bahasa, we have a whole bunch of different languages that are not common languages that we list within that. And what we've done is we use different methods to combine, and sometimes we've been able to offer up to 24 languages by having different Zoom meetings for the interpreters. We've used the approach of mimicking a physical gathering with the stage, the auditorium, the green room or the backstage, and the interpreters' booths in the back. And we sort of assemble all these different aspects in different Zoom meetings so that there is no bleed over or any chance of mishaps. Especially, there's been some cases where someone's channel drops, one of the interpreters drops and comes back, and to set them back up, they don't realize that they're not set up. They start speaking and it starts doing exactly what you were saying, competing. So we've separated them into a separate Zoom meeting just for the interpreters, and they get a feed from vMix that allows them to interpret, and it's fed back out to the different meetings.
I can see we're getting an interpretation just onto this session today. Hanny's absolutely right. There are really three types of interpretation, because interpretation is what people are doing as opposed to what you're reading at the bottom of the screen, which is the subtitles or translations. So we've got this simultaneous interpretation is the interpreter's listening, interpreting, and speaking all at the same time. And that is an art. They're unique people who can do that. And then you've got what Hanny also described as the speaker says a sentence and then it's interpreted into the second language, which is like a consecutive type of interpretation. And then, of course, you've got the sign language, which we all sort of take for granted. But sign language is unique to the culture that it's being used in. So you've got ASL, which is the American Sign Language, you've got French Sign Language, you've got all sorts of different. Some of the emotions are the same, in other words, the gestures, but the language itself is different. The letters are formulated in a different way, the meaning of words is different. So there's a lot that goes into there. And we do this on Zoom as well, because you can just spotlight a second the sign language interpreter, or through vMix and have him on the side at a smaller size, whatever. Yeah.
One of the challenges that we've encountered is sometimes the duration of our meetings is such that one interpreter gets worn out. So we get two interpreters for every language. We keep a chat going offline to the Zoom meeting where they're interpreting, and they coordinate between themselves if one needs to take a bathroom break or whatever, so they hand off the baton, as it were, because they can't hear within the interpretation channel when they're set as interpreters for the same language. I don't believe that they can hear the other speaking. They can only... Go ahead, Robert.
This has changed recently because Zoom has introduced, you can choose the channel that you're listening to. Okay. But there is one restriction. If I, as an interpreter, are interpreting, for example, on the English channel, in other words, I'm speaking in English, listening to French, I cannot listen to the English channel. Right. Otherwise, I'd loop myself through.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that is a limitation. The other thing is, from a professional standpoint, interpreters actually hand over every 15 to 20 minutes if they have a long meeting, because the load is so immense.
Right.
There are tests that have been carried out that an interpreter uses up about 1 kilo of body mass per hour of interpreting. It's massive. It's the brain that is functioning in an overdrive manner.
A great fitness program.
Right. Fantastic. Thanks. I appreciate Josh, your expertise in this, Robert. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, this isn't the interpretation test kitchen. I know it's the Zoom test kitchen, but I mean, this is fascinating to me. What you have me thinking about is, in so many ways, Zoom and other technologies, but Zoom in particular, has made the world so much smaller. And yet, communication is not any simpler. In fact, in some ways, it's more complex. I guess, do you imagine a time when Zoom, they already have captions in other languages. Do you imagine a time when Zoom is able to use AI to do this on its own?
Yeah, it's happening, slowly happening. Um, the way it's happening is that Zoom now has bought Otter. Otter is generating transcriptions in real time, and it's AI. If you watch it working, it'll start writing something, and then it realizes it's got the context wrong. It'll go back and rewrite it. It's so smart. It is so clever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now,
The only thing I've seen, Robert, where it got bit badly was because there is some back end administration policies that have to be set. Let's just say, don't confuse French as spoken in France with Quebecois. And I was dealing with people in Quebec City, right? And the administrator for that particular account had said, "Oh, French is French is French, right?" No, it's not.
No, it's not, Peter. You're absolutely right.
Oh, and by the way, you can run into the same problem with Spanish.
Yeah.
You can run the same problem with English. We had someone from Newfoundland speak the words "go forth," and what came out was "go fart," and you can imagine where the meeting went from there.
But Otter is very clever because Otter is accent orientated. So you can plug in a couple of these words that it should use for a specific task, because you need, especially for vertical markets, you need specialized names, especially in the pharmaceutical industry, where you've got a lot of new words that have not been spoken out loud yet. So yeah, but coming back to your original question, David, what we've been playing with is we take the transcript out of Otter, we have that being translated in real time by a person into a second language, and then we have a machine reading that back and using that as an interpretation channel. Now the lag is big because you've got a person who is translating at the moment. The translating programs, apps available in the market don't work in real time. You feed a text in and then you get it out. Yeah, so I think that's an area where Otter is going to be working on next to get that done.
So this may be a good place to share. One of the things that Jeff wanted to talk about today was that this was released on June 22nd, that it will now automatically translate in real time captions in other languages. And I'm not sure what impact this has, but if they got French, and we all know there's only one French, German, Spanish, Italian, Chinese is in beta, Russian, Japanese, Korean are both in beta, Dutch and Ukrainian. Is this connected to, would this make that workflow cleaner, easier, quicker?
It definitely will, and to be very honest with you, I hadn't seen this yet.
I think the question still runs into, because and Robert, I mean, the sad joke is I'm from the U.S. That means I'm a unilanguage person, but reality I speak Mexican form of Spanish as well, just because of where I live. And I don't speak it well, but Spanish is like French. There are multiple different variations of things. So it says speak Spanish, but I'm betting it's Castilian Spanish, not Spanish as spoken in Mexico or Argentina.
But don't you think someone in Mexico would understand Castilian Spanish?
There's
even if they don't speak it, but understand it?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I learned the hard way. Actually, one of my colleagues at work learned the hard way. She grew up in Argentina, so she spoke Spanish as the Argentine spoke. The idiomatic part of the language, she apparently issued a rather profound insult accidentally that was not an insult in Argentina, but was an insult in Mexico, and nearly got her fired. I mean, so idiomatic parts of the language can be very interesting at times, and the translator has to watch for that.
But if
I,
you're saying she's hearing Castilian, then her idiom is not going to be a problem. It would be only if the Castilian had an idiom that meant something vulgar.
Either way, it works either way. It works either way. I mean, I know for a fact that there are idioms in my version of English or our version of English that don't translate correctly in the UK version of English
Because we speak American.
because we speak American, but it's called English, right? So if somebody, that's why you see there's all different
American
flavors.
English.
There's American English, there's Canadian English, there's UK English, there's Australian English, right? Spanish, French are the same way as far as I know.
When, David, when you were showing that list of languages, was that assuming it was coming from an English to those languages, or was it going both directions?
Well, it says here, if the speaker is speaking in English in a meeting, captions can be made available in Spanish, Chinese, Ukrainian, and more. It doesn't, I don't know that it will do it the other way around. If the speaker is presenting in another language, you can change the language the captions are generated from. There you go. By default, English is set as the speaking language. If the presentation you're viewing is in another language, for example, French, there we go, you can change input language so the captions are generated more accurately in French.
I think the phrase more accurately speaks volumes.
Yeah.
And that this is all technology that's developing, and it's AI that's in process. It's not yet perfected. I hosted an event just last week. It had representatives from different Commonwealth nations. It was a reconciliation event, and you can imagine those from Ghana. Everybody was speaking English. There was no interpretation. But what I had discovered, because I had promised the transcript at the end of the webinar, I had to actually go through minute by minute to be able to correct what the transcription that Zoom provided for the event, and the mess that was. It was very laborious, but it just speaks to the idea that we're still not there. We're still in development.
So
Well,
Hanny,
definitely-
where are you located? Where are you located?
I'm in Toronto, Canada.
Oh, Toronto.
But Hanny, if you, I don't know how what the privacy is on those texts, but if you send me a piece of that text, I'll put it through Otter. Otter is really, I find that Otter gets to about 99% correctness on text. It's really good. Irrespective of accent. It's been specifically designed to work with accents, and without being judgmental, it was designed by a Chinese company where accents are an issue, especially when it comes to English.
Sure.
Or a challenge, maybe I should say, not an issue, but a challenge. And so they have really perfected the understanding of words and with spoken in English at the moment. It's all in English, and with different accents.
Yeah,
So
the biggest challenge was for location names, individual names, and event names that were being used to reference different activities in different places. And it wasn't just hearing it and converting it to text. It was actually understanding what the person was referring to. So I had to go through and search online the name of the event, the location, and so forth, historical names, etc. So there was a bit of research that had to be done to make the document at the end make sense.
Sure.
But thank you.
Sure.
I appreciate the offer. I'll text you and get your contact information privately.
Yeah, but Otter also, I mean, I speak about Otter because it has been bought by Zoom, so I sort of feel comfortable speaking about Otter here. But
Yeah.
Otter has been, is set up in such a way that you can actually put those proper nouns or names in before you run the function, so it'll catch them.
I think what Hanny was saying is he didn't know what the proper names were ahead of the time. He didn't know what they were ahead of time. That was the problem. That's why he had to go research them.
Fair
I
enough.
could have just
was he
handed it
talking-
off
what
to the
was that person
organizers and let
talking
them
about?
worry about it, but I didn't feel right doing that.
Nice.
When we do interpretation jobs, we actually ask the speakers to meet up with the interpreters, and they go through proper names and proper nouns and all these words so that we get them correctly. Dates, quotes. And quotes are the most difficult because quotes have already been translated into different languages, so you can't just make up the interpretation of it. Yeah,
that's all fine for prepared presentations and talks, but when it comes to Q&A, it's open season.
And Lois, do you have a thought?
One thing about this is if you are in a situation where things can happen as you're going along. In other words, it's not, we meet together for 15 minutes and then nobody ever knows how to reach anybody anymore. But if you have a little more, you can actually cut out that part of the transcript that so-and-so said, send it to them, and have them send it back. If you were going to publish the proceedings of an event, it might be worth your time to do that. I'm in a situation where there's a daily Quaker meeting for worship to pray for peace, and occasionally we have people saying messages, and so the interpretation is really not very good at all. But since I've just heard it, I snagged their thing, put it in a document, and I'm trying to get it straightened up while we're still in meeting. Now it means that I'm not in the meeting, I'm working the meeting, but it's very challenging to know what somebody said when I have no clue where that place is, or it's like some British name, I don't know, some place name.
Well, I mean,
and that's exactly what it was. I appreciate your insight on that. And that I thought of doing that, but getting a hold of all the people and getting them to sort of feed through and correct was going to probably take a little bit more time than the deadlines that I had. But thank you for that.
I really wish that the live transcript, when you look at it, when you view the full transcript, you can see people's names and then their thing. When you save it, when you go back to that file afterwards, it takes out all the names. So what I've come down to is I capture screenshots of that. I'll open the thing up and I'll just take a screenshot as I go down so I can know what person said that thing.
If I can comment on that, sorry, Robert, go ahead.
I was just going to say, you need to go back to Otter, because if you've got an Otter account and you link it to Zoom, you will get the person who's speaking, his name and what it says, what that person says.
You keep saying Otto. Otto who?
.ai.
Otter with an
.ai is the end of the name.
How do you spell the first part?
Let me actually
O-T-T-E-R. O-T-T-E-R. As in the animal.
As in the critter, okay.
Yeah.
Critter.
So what I do with the transcripts, I open it up, copy it, and paste it into a Word document, and just do quick searches and replaces for all the spaces in between, or the dash 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 greater than. I replace that with tabs. I replace the line returns with page returns, and then bring that back, and then it's all set. And I can take that into a table and convert it. That's really, really quick.
Yeah. The other thing I will say is, Robert said something that just reminds me. In my past life, I used to do, unfortunately, travel a bunch and do a bunch of technical presentations around computers, and my first introduction to simultaneous translation was in Brazil. And for what was supposed to be a 45-minute presentation on my part, turned to a 4.5-hour rehearsal with the translators, because every third word was a very strange technical term to them that we had to come up with a way to describe the concept. which took me back to, okay, we invented something now, and we came up with a really cool name for it, but that doesn't work in translation. So they had to learn all the words.
Yeah, I might mention too, just for the usage notes that we're looking at that David posted. So we have these original notes about these captions and translations that are available. I would mention the reason why we're not testing it in the test kitchen today, even though it's something that Jeff had suggested that we speak about, is that the prerequisites, you'll note, for viewing translated captions, this is not being ruled out onto the platform broadly. So it mentions, of course, you need the desktop client in order to participate in the meetings, but Zoom One Business Plus or Zoom One Enterprise Plus accounts are a prerequisite for having this feature. I'm not familiar with those branches of Zoom's offerings. Perhaps some in the meeting are more familiar with that, but that is a prerequisite for getting these captions in another language, apparently. Is that the account that you're using currently, Robert?
I have a Zoom business account. I've never heard of a Zoom One Business Plus, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, and it's highlighted, it's in bold, but it's not a selectable text that yeah, it's not something that I can look up, but and I have not done the research, but yeah, that's good to know. If you are not finding these features in your iteration of Zoom, that could be the issue of it. Jeff did leave a message for me that I don't know if he attempted to enable it on the account and then found that this was the limitation on deploying it, so that we could test it out and try it out. So it does have some of these options. Was there anything else you wanted to point out, David, about the release notes? I see that we have, as far as how to view the captions, I don't know if this is, not being familiar with it, I don't know if there's any changes in how to view them. Does that look about standard? Robert says, any participant in the meeting can self-enable captions as they are no longer dependent on the host to enable. Join a Zoom meeting, click Show Captions, the CC button. Captions will appear above the controls toolbar. By default, English is set as speaking language. The captions are generated in. So,
does that mean that the transcript is only going to be shown to people who have clicked that and not to everybody?
yeah, it looks like you can opt in from what I read. It's not it's not something that is thrust upon the entire meeting by default.
I think it is, because I'm seeing the full transcript now. I did not ask for captions. Maybe it got turned on by somebody in the old one.
I asked, I clicked on it to see.
Yeah.
I'll turn it off. Tell me if they go away.
Funny, I'm not getting them.
Are you, did you go to live transcript and say view full transcript?
No, I said show subtitle, because that's what we're talking about.
Oh, I'm talking about the transcript. I'm sorry.
So now I'm looking at the full transcript.
Yeah. And I see that even though I didn't do anything to turn on the captions.
But I think you might have by accident, because you saw that before I did anything.
Well, it's been going since, hold on.
You may have it. I wonder if you have
It's
it.
been going since 12:04.
Actually, David, I've had the transcripts on the screen since the beginning of the meeting. It was
For an hour and a half. Yeah.
And I haven't had mine at all.
and it's
So-
also on the YouTube
but
screen.
Each person can turn it on separately, though.
Are you talking
It
about
was-
subtitles, or are you talking about the transcript?
I'm
The
talking about the transcript. I just turned it on independently.
Sorry,
Okay,
I'm
I think
talking about the
the
subtitles.
the button at the bottom of my screen says Live Transcript, and if you click that, that's what I had to do to see it. it had an option to show subtitles. So the words subtitle and transcript are used interchangeably here.
No.
And when I
No, they're not.
selected it,
No, they're not.
They're
No.
not used interchangeably. They're,
Well, it's the same content. It's just displayed in different
Right.
ways.
Correct.
Subtitle is at the bottom and transcript is in a pop-out window.
And you don't have to see the subtitles in order to have available to you the full transcript.
Right, but you're saying, Lois, that your transcript opened by magic, and
No, I'm saying I can see the full transcript.
but did you open it to see it?
Well, just now.
Oh, well, it's always I mean, Zoom is always creating a live transcript. You just
Yeah.
don't see it until you open it.
And I believe
I don't think Zoom is always creating a live transcript. It only comes on if someone requests that it be enabled and someone, host or co-host, enable it, or if the meeting has been set to automatically turn it on. But it's not on in every meeting, for sure.
I believe it's
I-
only available to business accounts
No,
for hosts of meetings that have business accounts. Then you get the transcript. You don't get a transcript of a recording. I'm talking about the file that you get as part of the recording package.
Right, but we're talking about the
Transcripts-
live experience. In the live experience, you don't need to have a business account.
yeah.
Okay.
You can just have a pro account. And yes, it does have to be enabled on the back end. But once it's enabled, it's happening whether you turn it on or not. It's what you did. All you did was open the window.
Right,
Right.
but it had to have been enabled in this meeting in order for it to start.
Not in a meeting by meeting. Once you enable it in settings, it's available in all of your meetings.
yeah.
Available
Yeah.
but not turned on.
Yeah, and
But
I think
turning it on is on a person by person basis.
Okay, we're talking two different things. Subtitles are person-to-person basis. The transcript, if it is enabled in a meeting, then it's available to anyone. And it isn't in every meeting, but it can be enabled in any meeting.
Well, but I think you're talking past each other. I hate to say this, but you're talking past each other. The back end in settings says the operative phrase is enable the caption, the closed caption or the full captioning or the function. Once that's done, then each individual user can make it visible to themselves.
Subtitles, yes.
Subtitles and transcript.
No,
Yeah, that's the point. The back end controls every meeting you set up. Right? So, for instance, I'm just looking at the screen right now. I actually have to, because mine is off. If I were to turn mine on and then schedule a meeting, start scheduling meetings, everybody and their brother's cousin could get the transcript as well as the subtitles.
If you look here in the settings, there are two click buttons. There's automated captions and full transcript. So you can, once these are turned on, anybody can access it in any of your meetings.
Yeah, and another thing that we could probably figure out between us right now, looking at those transcripts, the live transcripts, I believe because of privacy concerns, your transcripts will start if you scroll all the way back to the start. I believe they start when you entered the meeting.
right.
So even though Zoom is copying that, it's not as though if you say something in confidence before another individual arrives. I'm pretty certain that
Okay.
this is not something that's going to be revealed in a transcript that you have access to if you had not been in the meeting to have heard it said.
And and if you are not in the room, in the main room at the time, if you're in a breakout room, you won't see on the transcript things that happened when you weren't there. But if you come back to the main room, then it will proceed to add the things that are being said then. And there is no, as far as I know, we haven't been able to figure out how to turn on a transcript in a breakout room at all. So it's only the main room. We have this global daily meeting, and so we've played around with this quite a bit. And I hear you all saying that if you turn it on in your not in the meeting settings, you can make it so it automatically occurs. And I'm saying that if I don't do that and I come into a meeting, we can still enable it right then, right there on the spot. And it is turned on by the host and or the co-host. And anyone can request enablement, and one of the officers then say you can do it. So it does not have to be set out of meeting. It can be done in meeting.
But if you set it globally, you don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah, it depends on whether you're in control of the meeting or not. If I walk into a meeting and I just say, I'd like to have closed captioning, I push the button, it puts a request, and they either accept it or
Gotcha.
don't accept it. But
So perhaps then, Lois, I wasn't aware of that. Perhaps then what you're speaking of is a way that Zoom enables as an accessibility function to enable it even if it's not been automatically set
absolutely correct.
to be available. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, thanks for that. So
If I can just comment about some things that you can turn on before a meeting starts and during the meeting, I discovered really in a tough situation where we had upgraded our webinar account and it wasn't assigned to the user that was hosting the webinar. We could not access the additional numbers, but that was about 2 years ago. More recently, we were in a large meeting and we were going beyond the business capacity of 300 attendees. And we had, as part of our company's different accounts, one of them was the large meeting 500. So within the meeting, we went into the web interface, assigned it to the user that was hosting that meeting, and all of a sudden that limit changed from 3 to 500.
Nice.
And that was live in the meeting. So Zoom is doing something in the back end that allows you to reassign certain things. So maybe this is one of those things that they've added, as Josh was saying, for accessibility's sake.
Interesting. So it's and what was the order of events that you were able that larger meeting add-on?
We had, as part of the different items that we have in our product package, we had a number of different business accounts, all of which have a limit of 300 per meeting. And we also had a large meeting 500 as one of the products we had purchased. And it was assigned to a different user. That user was hosting a meeting and it was pushing up to the 300. So within the meeting, during the meeting rather, we went to the web interface, and as the account owner, I changed the setting. I reassigned the large meeting 500 to that user that was hosting the meeting, and it immediately took effect.
Copy. Okay, I got you. Yeah, I think that's pretty standard practice. I thought you changed the meeting over, host provide it to the host that had it, but yeah, you can move that license
Yeah,
to
you
that.
couldn't
As
in the
far
past.
as the okay, yeah. Gotcha.
I agree
had
with you, Han. You couldn't do it in the past.
Yeah, and we found
ran
out the
into
hard
a-
way in a webinar where it was capped at 500. We had the webinar 5,000, and we couldn't assign it or do anything. We had to terminate and restart.
I had a sticky issue one time where I had ordered the large meeting add-on for an event, and I had found out that if you have, I had one professional account, but I had other free users that were associated with my account, and Zoom in their criteria for applying that function did not apply the function to the professional user in it. It applied it to somebody else. And it was my first experience with using the add-on function. I had no idea that buying that function, it would immediately go to the professional user, but it went to one of the other users. And so the meeting that I had started and opened was not getting it. And as the event happened, this is one of their Zoom horror stories. Yes. As the event approached, and it was starting at 99 and did not go over 100. I went back, checked the settings. Sure enough, there was no option to buy the next one was 500. So I bought the 1,000, just not thinking that it was not available because it had already been purchased. but there was nothing there to show that attribution had been given to alphabetical. I don't know what usage of it. So, I don't know. That was early pandemic. So
Did you
things may have
exercise the
changed.
English language?
What's that?
I said, did you exercise the English language at that point?
Well, I eventually called up and found out the reason why. I eventually got a refund on, the expense, but it didn't help the event at the time. I had to pivot to another Zoom meeting just to get the larger meeting, because I couldn't figure it out, specifically not at the time that was the way that things had gone. But the other like free events that I attached onto it were just things that I had played with, just adding different accounts. I had no inkling that this would have a consequence of having them just automatically being assigned, which I don't know the logic of why it was assigned to that way. Zoom was helpful after the fact, but not knowing that going in could be painful.
Yes.
Yeah, but it doesn't work like that anymore. That's the good news, because it doesn't allocate it to any specific user. So it's just available to be allocated now.
So what happens is when you hit up to your limit and it doesn't let you go any further, you're like, oh, let me go take that and assign it to the correct meeting, and then boom, it blesses your meeting and it works. See, now the funny thing is I didn't know where to get it from at the time, because it was already assigned to another host. So yeah, hopefully that's
in my case I had made the mistake of thinking that when I purchased the webinar 5000, it was automatically going to assign it to my account, my user account, and it wasn't. It was just sitting there waiting to be assigned. And that's when we had a moment, and I somehow ended up being on camera, and my words were, "This is disastrous," and that became a meme that was going around after the meeting.
And a soundbite was born.
Yeah, that's it.
Josh, can we just do a quick check here, because I've got the full transcript, and I came in at 1:45, and that was before. And the first words I have are from you, and it starts off with "that's that," or "that's."
And what's the timestamp on that?
Well, I've got it in European time, so it's 2043, but it'll be 43:19.
Gotcha. You know what? I'm trying to go back. I thought I had seen, so I just looked back. I wonder if I ran out of background. When I just checked it before, I saw the exchange that Jeff and I had when we opened the meeting, when I was the first person in the meeting. I'm not seeing that right now. I'm seeing in my Eastern time zone, 1506 time zone, which is, yeah, interesting.
I came in a couple of minutes after the hour, and I'm going back to Peter and yourself at 02:10. So that would be Eastern 15:02:10.
Okay. That's prior to mine. I'm wondering if I haven't lost some of the very beginning part of it. I have an option to save the transcript. I guess I could do that. Save it. Shows folder.
Remember that save a transcript only saves what's there now, not what happens in the future.
What?
Yep.
I want my money back. They can't predict what I'm going to say.
They changed chat. So save chat, which used to wait till the meeting was ended and then you had the little chat. Now it's when you press that button, that's all you get. You don't get the rest of it. Very annoying.
So yeah, looking at the transcript file, I'm seeing it all the way back to my handoff with Jeff on the transcript, which is 14:35:26 in Eastern time zone. Now, interestingly, if I scroll all the way up to the top, if I'm scrolling correctly, I'm not able to get all the way back there.
Hey, but something's happening. Josh, sorry to interrupt you. I've lost all of mine up to hi Josh when we met up. Now something's
It no longer exists. It never happened. No. So I think what's happened is there might be a character limitation as far as how far back the in chat. I'm theorizing here. There might be a limitation to where it'll give you like you've only got so many characters you're allotted or so many exchanges, and so you'll probably see that sunsetting our earlier conversations. Now, if you hit save transcript,
Josh, you can test this by leaving your transcript open at the top and seeing if things go away as you're talking. If you've reached your limit, it should remove the
Right.
list.
that's
should be
exactly what's
actively being
happening at
removed.
me.
Yeah. There we go. Yep. The lowest proof is in fact happening. Yeah. So there is a limit to your transcript. So it seems like what Zoom is offering you is like a reasonably, I don't know if it's characters or it's time or whatever. They're offering you it seems like it's character point. I don't know if you just didn't say a lot in the meeting. It might keep the whole transcript. If you want to see it, you can save the transcript, open it up, and it will show you everything.
Except without the names.
It will show you
Without
correct,
the names, yeah.
without the names. Right. And it won't show you what you're going to say in the future. So we'll have to ask Zoom about that. But
And it also doesn't break up who said what when. We have a meeting where it's like someone will speak and then 20 minutes later someone else will speak. And when you go and look at it, the beginning of the second person's thing is up there with the end of the first person, even though it's 20 minutes later. Bizarre.
yeah, so I wonder now if I save another transcript, show in folder, open up another one. Let's see what the future beholds with my, so let's see, let's compare that. Okay, so I still have all the way at the bottom. It looks like it's given me a complete, yeah, I got 1645. So, yep. So yeah, that's nice. So it'll give you from beginning to present when you save the transcript. And I believe, does it replace the text? I think it does. Did it replace them? I think it does. I only have one folder. Curious, because I opened it up, closed it. I think it overwrites the text.
It does. It did exactly the same at my end.
Ah, okay. I think I remember someone mentioning that Zoom does this. Yeah, that's why I had the inkling to test it. Yeah. So I don't really see that as a bad. The interesting thing is, I'm wondering, it's curious thing. It's a text file. It's a TXT, and I'm using a Windows device here on the Windows client. And I actually had the old file that was overwritten up, and then opened the other file, and I had them both up simultaneously. And looking at the origin file, I saw one file in that folder, which curiously, whenever I closed them all and opened it back up, it was the updated file, the recent one. Yeah, not sure how Zoom is able to get away with that. There must be some way that permissions the file structure of Windows is not giving it an issue for some reason.
I didn't know anything could replace files without my permission. It always asked me. I'm on a Mac, though.
Right? Yeah. Do you find that to be the same? So if you
I haven't
save
tried it.
another
I'll go
transcript-
try it now.
Yeah, so if you go ahead and save a transcript, and then Zoom will kindly show you where that directory is. You can open it up, so you should be able to see the contained folder.
I just tried it on my Mac and it overwrote it without asking me permission.
Yeah. So I wonder if it appended the file. I wonder if that's how it's able to get by on both Mac OS and Windows for not violating
it shows the original creation date, and when I resave the transcript, it shows a modified date that's later. So it's just appending to the file and just assuming that it's still open and you're just editing it.
And it's assuming that it's got the identical file name. So I did it, it appended it for the second time, and then I changed the name, put a -2 after it. When it did it again, it's got a separate file. It is a big file, but it's a separate file.
So what you could, I mean, knowing that this works this way, I could see a couple of helpful usages there. So one thing you could do is if you wanted to take a specific section, let's say you were in a meeting and you wanted the minutes to be a certain transcript. So you take that, save that file. You should be able to take that file and then save it as such. And if the meeting continues past that point, you don't really have to worry about creating another one or appending it or having an addition file onto it. At the end of the meeting, you can save that portion and save that as a secondary file. The curious thing is I had them both up at the same time. And, in theory, I can save as, a particular document for that partial document that was being saved. And so, you could have it if you just wanted just that portion of text, but not having to worry that you've used your one saved transcript execution in the meeting, because you can continue to do that throughout the meeting.
And you will just get, if you renamed it, you will get the full transcript as the second thing.
Yes.
You
Makes
don't
sense.
get from here. I think the only way to get, I don't want to have, I want to save what I have now, and then I don't want to see that in the next thing I save. I think the only way you can do that is if you were to leave and come back and you would restart a new file for yourself. But I don't think there's any other way.
No,
Yeah, and
you can't save the incremental new, but you can save different renditions of the same file with the additional text. So what I did was just duplicated it, so it appeared with the file name copy, and then I saved again, and I duplicated that one, so I had copy 2, and they're just larger and larger versions of the same file.
Yeah, and that kind of speaks to the way that Zoom works as far as chat, transcripts. It's experiential. So if you go into a breakout room, all of the chat and features, Zoom will continue to keep that in your history. If you go from one breakout room to another breakout room, whatever is spoken out in that breakout room or chatted in that breakout room, you'll carry that transcript for you. If you go back from there into the main room, whatever happened while you were out of the room, you'll never know about because you weren't there. You weren't a part of that experience. But Zoom will continue to keep up that chat library. And it's the same with the transcript or the other, of course, the captions are live. But the one exception to that, well, that has pluses and minuses, the way that we deal with these things as producers. So the negative thing is, up until recently, was that, I'm trying to think, correct me if I'm wrong, but we've just recently been given the ability, the host, to delete chat messages. I don't believe, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't have the ability to delete the chat, like wipe the chat. So for example,
can co-hosts do that too?
So you can delete your own messages. I believe that we can test it.
Yes,
but
we can. Co-host can.
Co-host.
Hey, and is this a meeting only, a webinar only, something for both?
So if you take a look here, if I, as a co-host, if I hover over, I can copy, and now I can also delete if I want to. That has to be enabled in the back end, and that's also something you have to request from Zoom.
Right. And I believe they'll grant that request for a pro account. Is that your understanding, David?
They will. Yeah, I have it enabled on my account also.
Yeah, that's right. Because the last time we were here, we talked about that, and I did not follow the rest of you to requesting it at the time. So now it's on my to-do list, right? Request. Now, that would be a very tedious thing to clear a chat. That functionality is not yet available unless it's somewhere that I don't see as the host.
Although if you turn off chat, if you just stop chat, if you just turn it off, then no one has access to it unless they've saved it separately. Is that correct?
True.
If you turn it off, I can still save it. I think.
So I'll do that. So let's see. Let's go into our security settings, and I will remove chat. Now you can't add to the chat since I've removed it from the security settings, but
and I cannot save it.
Can't save either yet.
So, and this doesn't apply to hosts and co-hosts because
I was just going to say because I'm still chatting.
Right. Okay. He's so chatty. So
sorry.
No. So the regular user that doesn't have host or co-host should not be able to add anything to the chat. Now David or I or any co-hosts can violate that chat role, as the security features, as we know, apply to people that aren't co-host or co-host. So those features that you turn on and off.
Yeah. So there is participants. Yeah. So there is a halfway thing. If you would be so kind as to go to your Shield and turn on chat, and then go to the bottom of your chat window, and down there you have the option of setting to whom participants can send messages. And so this is a way that you can keep the chatter down, but they can still contact the host or co-host if there's a problem.
These are webinar-like features that they've pulled into the meeting, I think, where depending on you're targeting the audience of where the chats are going.
Yeah. So a feature is you can, as Lois mentioned, and I can display them.
You can even do it so that they can send a message to all the other participants, but not pass private notes.
So
great for teachers, by the way.
Yeah.
I can share this. So the feature that Lois is speaking about, the little ellipse down here, gives you the chat options. So if I say no one, I still believe if I do that, I think, David, you can still chat as a co-host. Is that correct? Yes, you still. So no one doesn't mean no one. It means no participant.
Participants can chat with no one.
Yeah, it doesn't say that, but yeah, that's what it means.
It does say that. Participant. That's that word.
Oh, okay. No, you're right. My bad. Yes. It was
I'm
in
not
bold,
right.
so I
I'm
missed
Lois.
So the definition of participants are non-hosting privileged participants.
Correct.
Right. You're here for the ride. Yeah. You're not going to host or co-host. You're going to participate by being present and chat if we let you. So either no one, hosts and co-hosts, everyone, and anyone directly. So direct messages is an additional function that when turned on right now, I can allow private chatter to go between the co-hosts. If you'd like that to be off, you can just set it to everyone, in which case everything has to be above board, nothing under the table chat.
That's not quite. I think if you say everyone, but no direct messages, I think that they can still send to host and co-host. Let's set it that way, and I'll see if I can send to you.
Okay, so right now I have it set to everyone, so I do not have it set to everyone and anyone directly.
And yes, I can send a direct message to Josh and to David and to Brandon.
So
but
you
not
can
to any
send
other
it
participant.
to a host or a co-host, but you can't
Yes.
send it to someone that's a participant.
Right. So that
right.
restriction does not keep me from sending it to you.
Right, and I think
As host or co-host only, though.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
You know what? So, and I'm remembering this wrong. Are all so restricted chats that can only go to the co-hosts? Are they sent to every? So they would be private. So that's the nature of a private chat, right? So something that not everyone sees. It's not an everyone text. So
Right.
yeah, that makes sense.
So everyone goes to all the participants, hosts, and co-hosts. The other one, if you set it that way, you can only send a host and co-host. It does not, and if you would set it that way, it does not allow to send to everyone, but it also does not allow me to send to all the hosts and co-hosts. I have to pick one. I'm a participant. I have to pick a person to send it to. And I wish they would change that so that a message to can go to host and co-host and it goes to all of them. But that's not the way it is.
Well,
So you're
isn't that
saying
available
that,
now with the settings that you were playing with? Host and co-host, you have to pick which of the host or co-hosts,
That's
but
right.
everyone goes gives you the option to send it to all the hosts and co-hosts,
No.
as well as that's
all the people.
no, I don't know.
Yes.
When Josh had it set to everyone,
so I have it
I was
set to
able to
everyone
s-
right now.
okay, so when you set it to everyone right now, I can specify the specific host or co-host,
Right.
or if I go to everyone,
It's to everybody.
it sends it to everybody.
Yes.
And now I've set it to host and co-host only.
And that's selective to the individual host or co-host.
Right. Exactly.
So I had a
So-
feature request with Zoom for the ability to create participant chat lists within the meeting.
What
And
is
I
a
guess-
participant chat list?
So I could, for example, I'm hosting a meeting and I want to chat with just the interpreters. And I send a group chat to all the interpreters. Or I want to send a chat to participants from Europe. And I can create subgroups. And that's not yet available.
Is that available in webinars?
No, it's not available on any other platforms. It would be nice to
So-
have.
There's a sorry, go ahead.
No,
Go
I'm
ahead,
just going to
Dave.
say
I
it's
think we were thinking the same thing. Go ahead.
Well,
ahead.
maybe. I mean, there are a couple different ways to get that done. One is to use ZoomOSC and Companion. You can create target groups there. That seems like a longer process than necessary. But the other thing is, we had a Zoom app come in. Sorry for the noise. We had a Zoom app come in a little while ago. What is it called? Now I'm blanking. Twine. And Twine it's really about breakout rooms. That's really about visual breakout rooms. But they have a really nice chat feature built into Twine, which is, from what I've seen, heads and tails above Zoom's chat. And you may be able to tag multiple people and create groups in there. So you might want to look out for Twine for Zoom, it's called. Sorry, Josh.
Actually, I was thinking something different, but yeah, bonus points for mentioning ZoomOSC, and of course, we got to bring
You know
the
what?
artillery.
You
to
know
use
why?
That one.
because I spent the hour before this, I was on a call with Jonathan and Andy teaching me ZoomOSC and Companion. So
Yeah, they would have been disappointed if this recording had been like, I have no idea how you would do that. Yeah.
Twine is,
so-
is a chat app separate from Zoom, is it not? That has now been introduced into Zoom.
Twine isn't really it's not a chat app. It's really it was a separate app. They've now created a Twine for Zoom app, which was just went into public release. It's free for this month. I have no idea what the charges will be after that, but it's a nice little app.
So the status of apps, if I may, all the apps that I've seen so far don't have any teeth, in the sense that they don't have any hooks in the Zoom. Is that so? When you say, David, your suggestion of using the Twine app to get this custom list out, am I correct in thinking that, one, if you intended to implement this, you'd have to have everyone download the app and then sign on to your particular Twine?
So
Is it worse than that?
no, it's not worse than that. So it's interesting. That was the biggest hurdle, and they've been working on that. Is this thing that in order for a Zoom app to work, everyone has to have it downloaded. So what they've done is, and I don't understand the back end behind it, but they have massaged the app in such a way that for certain functionality, people have to download the app. But for a lot of the functionality, you actually don't. They worked with Zoom on this, and they figured out a way so that, again, I don't understand the back end. it's interestingly, I don't know if where the chat falls in there. So that would be something to check out. But
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious if you find an answer for that. And that's a
Thank
thing,
you for
like,
the tip, by the way. I appreciate the twine tip.
yeah, good tip on that. I want to say that the apps have basically just been what I call the Zoom browser. It's like it's a browser app in a Zoom branded browser that opens up with your Zoom app. So like we've got apps, but they don't really do anything. So the functionality that you're talking about, to where they were able to actually work with Zoom and do some non-SDK stuff, or even maybe API calls to be able to work something out. The use of having something that you don't have to, you can just deploy in a Zoom meeting, that the only reason that connection is made is because someone joined the meeting. That's the connection, not that we talked ahead of time. I called you and I said, hey, make sure you download the Twine app and show up at the meeting. By the way, this is my account. Like, if you're going to do that, you might as well just have a second screen experience on it. That's been the kind of disappointment there. And what I see that is yeah, it's coming, and this is Zoom warming up to the market before they actually make it useful. For that being more of instead of a second window experience, making it more of an integrated experience.
Right. I mean, even Zoom, the whiteboard, which is made by Zoom, still really isn't a fully integrated experience in meetings. This is Twine. You're not seeing much here because this is just my Twine app and it's not connected to this account. But one of the nice things that they did put in here is that if you're the host and you're using this little button right up here, invite users to use app. If I don't actually know if this will work now, but oh yeah. So I can send a message to all of you.
Oh, nice.
And you just got it in chat, and you can download the app right there.
So there you go. I've got the invitation from David.
And now see, it is working. So now they're all joining. Now, I think because I'm not the host, I'm not sure I can actually do anything with this. But if you see, I can click on them. I can chat them directly from here. The whole here, and everyone suggested chat. I'm not sure if you can do that additional functionality, but again, the main idea here is that you can create each one of these tables, as it were, is a breakout room. It's leveraging breakout rooms, and so when you open a bunch of in Twine, when you create all these tables, you can say how many people, and then you can do A/B matching, and you can put them in different rooms for certain times and all that other stuff. But I didn't mean to. I was just
no. Yeah. And just for experience, so when I clicked on the View app, I got a little pop-up window that says "Sign in to use Zoom apps," and a little block window that came up, and it explains, to view and use Zoom apps, you must sign in to an account on Zoom desktop.
So that means you can't do it from a browser, and that makes perfect sense.
And it makes perfect sense, and it also puts tremendous limitations on the usability of any app, because so many people join Zoom meetings from their iPad or iPhone.
But you can do that with an account. It's if you're using a browser, that's the problem, right? So I join Zoom all the time on my iPhone, but I have an account.
Interesting.
And you also have the native app, don't you?
So
No.
I'm
Zoom app, yeah.
To be clear, I'm doing this on my desktop. So when I hit the View button, what happens is I'm in the app. I'm on a desktop. So when I hit this View button, what pops up in the app window of Zoom: sign in to use Zoom apps. To view and use Zoom apps, you must sign into an account on Zoom desktop. I think the operative words are Zoom desktop. I think the operative verbs are sign in.
So you're not signed in, is what you're saying. You're using your Zoom app, but you are not signed in.
Well, I'm also using I'm hosting on an account that I don't own, so maybe that has something to do with it. This is not mine, so
But
So
are you
I-
signed in, Josh?
I am. Yeah,
You're signed into Zoom.
I am signed into my Zoom account. Yes.
All right.
Oh, you know what? Okay, so I'm on. I happen to be signed into an enterprise account right now, and it might be that those permissions are not enabled for this account. So that might be the reason why. Now, if anyone else has tried it, let me know if anyone else has hit the enticing blue button. Did you, Robert?
Yeah, I have exactly the same problem. I am logged into my Zoom app as the same user that I'm logged into this meeting, and I'm still getting that I have to log in. I don't know.
But I don't think that's unusual, actually. Very often, I'll be logged into my Zoom client, and when I go into the web portal, it asks me to log in again. That doesn't.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that's all that
The
strange.
issue I'm having is that I don't have I can't unfortunately share. Well, I could, but the window, the little. So I'll go ahead and click it again just to pop it up. It pops up in a Zoom app window notification box, and I don't have any option to sign in. I only have the option to click OK and dismiss the icon. So I don't have a call to action that I can action to
And when
start
you-
progressing.
When you dismiss the icon, does it take you to Twine?
No, if I hit the OK button, it's like that's it. It just dismisses the box, and I'm back to square zero.
Well,
So
it worked for
interesting.
me, so I don't know.
Maybe it's an enterprise thing.
So you
No,
were
I have
able
exactly
to,
the same problem.
Huh.
Lois,
It's
you were
because
able
I'm
to.
simple. I have one account, I'm on one computer, I have one screen, there's just no complications.
Right, so-
I'm logged into one account, and I'm having the same issue. Are you guys on Macs? Because Josh, are you on a Mac or a?
PC.
I'm on a PC as well. I'm on a
That's
PC as
it.
well.
That's it.
Yeah, I'm on a Mac on a business account. I'm the account owner. I'm logged into both the browser and I'm using the client logged in. I didn't get the pop-up.
Jason is saying that he's on a PC, and he just clicked on
Yeah.
the view button, and it worked for him.
Yeah, I don't think it has anything to do with Mac or PC. I think it has to do with which account you have.
Yeah.
It might have something to do with the fact that I. No, I don't think that's what I inherited
Not the-
host.
You're
I have to hop
hosting
on-
something you're not the primary owner for.
Maybe.
This
I have to
isn't
hop
my
off, but
meeting.
can I just share one? I just want to share one last thing, and this is, honey, this is for you. One of the interesting things about chat with Twine is that it's persistent. So if you were to, if we were all in one meeting, we close this meeting, and then we come back to the meeting and we open Twine again, all of our messages from the last meeting will still be there. Now, I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's an interesting thing.
We apologize since the last meeting, but it's still there. What you said is still there.
Is it persistent with the meeting ID, or is it persistent with you and I chatted at some point? Now, if we go over to my Zoom space, we'll see each other,
I assume it would be with the meeting ID, but that's a good question.
which we
Yeah, I will
cannot
s-
test at this point. Okay, I gotta go, guys. Bye.
I have one
Yeah.
feature request that I'd like to request of you as well, to sort of help push it up, and that's the ability to have in the webinar, the ability for the host to turn back practice session on at the end.
Ooh. Yeah.
I mean, that's huge for me in my context. What I've had to do as a workaround was to send everybody a link to another meeting so that we can have a private panelist discussion at the end of the webinar. But it would be great to terminate it and not have to end the meeting abruptly and just lose everybody.
Robert's going to tell you about backstage. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, I'm not going to tell you about backstage. I'm going to tell you about the virtual backstage. In other words, I run a meeting for the panelists, which I push into a webinar for the attendees.
Right. Yeah, that's what we're doing for most of the ones that we use vMix for. And it just, I mean, it adds so much more on the back end requirements of the hardware and cloud services and so forth. But for a simple meeting, Or for a simple webinar, it'd be great to be able to go backstage.
Yeah, you can do that with MS Teams. I hate to say that. On the MS Teams live event, you can switch off and switch on as many times as you want.
Yeah.
How does Teams handle, so in Zoom webinar, when you end practice session, it actually invites the participants to come in the meeting at that point. So
Yeah.
re-enabling it, I wondered how they would manage, like where they would put the participants if that were the case. How does it manage in Teams?
I think of it, I don't know what Teams, but in my mind, the way I visualize it is an auditorium filled with people in front of a curtain, people behind a curtain. Nobody has come in, the doors haven't opened yet until your webinar ends the practice session and goes live. So the doors come in and you can have something temporary on the screen before you open the curtains and the first panelist shows up. I'd love to be able to do the same and now close the curtains and usher everybody out of the facility and have a private meeting behind the curtains.
So the waiting room becomes the foyer.
Yeah. Yeah.
And send everyone out. Send everyone out.
Yeah.
So-
Put up some coffee or something and have them go enjoy themselves.
So you're with the Zoom events license on your webinars, you get the ability to do backstage. If you've read about it, and it is kind of like that in a sense that you can allow the participants to dismiss themselves, and you have somewhere else that you can go. And the nice thing about that is you can, without changing the state of the meeting, you can have that private session at any time and use it for staging. It's because of features that imitate that functionality that it might be a bigger ask to reinstantiate it. They'll say, hey, have you thought about upgrading your license to Zoom events so that you can enable backstage?
It just makes it so much bigger in terms of hosting the event and all the different requirements than the simplicity of a webinar to just close the live aspect of it, and that would dismiss everybody. I mean, I understand the difference between webinars and events and all the things that you can do within that, the extension of time, et cetera, et cetera. It's beautiful, but the simplicity of just a one webinar where you can shut off the attendees and say goodbye is what I'm asking for.
I should interject. I never got to my solution about the chat. And unfortunately, David and them have left. But right now, Zoom is trying to, in the Zoom Events platform, they have a more robust chat feature that does have, contacts of being able to link individuals and to reach out to individuals. So that is something that that feature actually had the delete your own text function before Zoom rolled it out for the general audience. And they're building that sort of as what they're deficient in, whereas like Teams started out basically as a messaging service that grew into video conferencing. Zoom is coming from the video conferencing and filling out all of the social networking features right now. So that might be some of those features might be, I mean, the idea is ideally that if you opened up, say that the hub of your event happened to be everyone met each other at this Zoom event, and then their lobby chat became your point of, hey, that person I networked with, and go back to that lobby chat, and then you can connect with them and then have direct communications in that sense. But
cool. I haven't played around with events, but maybe it's time I start.
There is another group, sort of an extension, a fork of this group, and they meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they meet in Zoom events and do the same. It's your Zoom events test kitchen, if you will. That's not what they call it, but yeah. I can forward that to you if you like. Let's see, I don't have that information available, but yeah, Tuesdays and Thursdays, they often meet and do the same kind of test kitchen things, specifically with that platform. Lois,
Cool, thank you.
You're back.
I left the meeting without clicking the 2 buttons, save chat, save transcript. I'm wondering if there's anyone here who would be kind enough to take those 2 files and email them to me. And there's my email address.
Sure.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
You've successfully cleared your chat now. Your palette is clean.
Yeah, but I got to go run a program. So
Now keep in mind the emails that we will send you will be our perspective of the chat.
that you were here before I was, Josh. So that's okay.
That's true. Yeah.
Before Abraham, he was, right?
I'll have to delete
Somebody
some
would-
stuff in the very beginning, though. I'll have to
Someone
delete all
was-
those lowest
someone-
comments. Yeah.
Someone was here. Oh, don't worry about that. Someone was here and he used a phrase. He said something was so old that it was when Noah was a minnow. And I'm going, Noah was a minnow? I think he meant Moby Dick was a minnow. I don't know. It didn't make sense to me, but oh well.
Noah may be one
Bye-bye.
of his family members. Who knows?
Nice.
Okay, ciao.
So yeah, I'm looking at our time. We've been at it for our traditional stint of things. If anyone has anything pressing, I don't want to close down over it, but how are we feeling about topics?
I just got one more thing, Hanny.
Sure, go ahead, Rob.
With the interpretations and the interpreters, I usually open a slash chat separate from the Zoom meeting and just keep the interpreters on slash. And the reason I use slash is because we do a lot of corporate events, and slash is accepted as a corporate secure app. Yeah? So
Yeah.
I don't get all of the privacy issues that you would get if you were to use Messenger or any other
Right.
WhatsApp or
Yeah.
anything like that.
Yeah, we resorted to the same kind of thing. And what's worked in our context is both Telegram and Signal. Splash has got a lot more features in its feature set, and we found that to be somewhat complicating for some people. Those that do use Splash, it's great, and those that use Teams, it's great. The other thing is we've used Discord. We've also used I've taken it off my phone right now, but we used to use TeamSpeak just to keep all the it's a gamer's audio chat platform. And so is Discord started that way as well, but to keep the conversation going without having to type and
Back
just
channel
use
audio.
back channel audio, right, for all the different players, the technical players. It's been great that way.
Yeah. Slash will also allow the users to share the mics, which is really good. It's a back channel.
That's great. I like that.
Yeah. By the way, I just discovered that they, what we used to call Zoom meetings is what's been rebranded to Zoom One.
I think that Zoom One must have the additional subscription to telephone.
And that's exactly what I'm looking at. Is it's whiteboard and messaging, and then at the Business Plus plan. No, the telephone is all add-ons.
Interesting. So
I just discovered that because I was trying to figure out something else, and I said, "Oh, huh." Now they now call it.
That's an interesting topic in itself, and I'll have to check and see. I have a pro account that I'm not signed into currently. This is a enterprise account, but the pro account, interestingly, I know that the enterprise account that I have does not support telephony, but the pro account that I have does. And so I get, when you go and share the invite, it'll give you the, all of the exchange numbers and what countries that you want. It comes with all that chatter text that associates with people calling into the Zoom meeting. Interestingly, from the enterprise account, it had not. And I believe that might be a point of negotiation to include the, I don't know if it's SIP or just the general telephony. I don't know what terminology Zoom is using.
And of course there is an add-on where you can, because I know what business here does it. I mean, they use Zoom for their phone service, So I
Sure.
mean, that's an add-on. And some of us who've been had the pro accounts for a while, we got the whiteboard for free.
Mhm.
Oh, interesting. So when I got into it beginning of pandemic with my pro account, I got not only telephony, but the whiteboard as well.
Right.
Now I know there was a House of Worship plan where I guess part of the negotiations, there was a discount offered by the negotiations for this. And what I noticed is all of the accounts that came out of that offer lacked telephony with it. When I signed up, it was at the discounted rate at the beginning of pandemic for the pro account. And it was like, hey, sign up for the year and then you get it for this account. And it just included
Right.
the telephony with it. So it's interesting. If your account, that's interesting that they just throw it in for a pro account, but then apparently, unless they say, oh, well, you know what, that's as low as we're willing to go. What if we slash telephony? Maybe. I don't know if that was part of the discussion as far as, it being around, but we had done a Tesla event, and we had found it helpful for people in low coverage, low reception areas to join the ingress into the meeting with a phone call. And I just assumed at the time, okay, let me just find the the meeting number ID, use the Zoom exchange number that I always use to call it. And then I found out, to my surprise, that the meeting in fact did not, even though being part of an enterprise account, did not include the telephony, which was unfortunate.
And if you have that option, you can turn it on and off in your settings.
Right. Even, it's incremental enough to when you're scheduling a meeting.
That's what I mean.
You can, yeah, right. Okay. Fantastic. Well, if there's nothing else pressing, I think we've had a nice discussion, exchanged some different ideas, spreaded more myths while we were at it, and squashed a few. So I think we've done our due diligence. Thanks everyone for coming. Next week, hopefully we'll have our regularly scheduled host. So, we have Thalok. I see your hand up.
Hey Josh,
Thalok, what you got for us?
I was just watching on YouTube and listening to your conversation about the phones. And so I wanted to, this is all new to me. I mean, because I know that I saw the other day that John had like a phone on his desk that was actually a Zoom phone. Is that what you're talking about when you're talking about Zoom phones? Or are you talking about just the way you can dial into a meeting?
It's both.
The dialing into the meeting.
And then I was referring to the other one, Tila.
Okay, that's what I thought maybe you were both talking about two slightly different things, but I wanted to make sure.
Well, Zoom does have, I think what Peter's referring to, Zoom does have its own VoIP service. And you can buy that that product and not have any other association with Zoom. You can get a VoIP service through Zoom. And I actually wonder, it may have been something that Zoom, it goes ways back, Zoom's VoIP service. But the interesting thing is them pairing that service with the meetings is just an odd financial model of how they're doing it. It's like they don't even give you the option. They just give you, at least when I purchased this,
but that service
2020.
But that service is so that people can dial into meetings,
Correct.
not so that they can call the rest of the exchange in the world, like calling my cell phone.
Correct. Right.
And so I think those are two different services.
It is. Yeah. Those are different services where, an actual phone service that you have, making other phone calls and just accessing over VoIP is an issue, is an option there. The thing that surprised me is that the very, base model included this feature and the very enterprise model did not. Was interesting.
Wait, but what feature did it include? Of these two features, of the two features that we're discussing,
it was
which
the
one
being
did
able
the
to
base
phone into a meeting.
Okay,
So that
got it.
feature is absent from the account that I'm signing to right now. That feature is absent
As it's an enterprise account.
as an enterprise account. Now I'm assuming that if I wanted to enable that function, I could call up Zoom and negotiate it. But it's just and that I was not present during the negotiations of this account. So perhaps that was a topic of conversation. It was like, well, then just leave it out. But yeah, so it's something that the thing that surprised me is that they had just they had just matter of factly included it in a base pro license, and it's something that was not included for the enterprise. Although then again too, there's only 100 people without any additional add-ons that you can get into the license, whereas enterprise account starts at 300. So it might have something to do with it as well.
Is business and enterprise the same in your language, Josh, or are they two different entities?
That's a good question. It's a good question. I really don't know the terminology of Zoom's tiered services.
So I can read them off. Well, actually, can I share my screen?
Sure. Sure.
And sorry for coming back and being 20 seconds off that topic. It's just YouTube has a thing.
Right. I'm glad that you were.
If you look here, I mean, I'm on the Zoom plans and pricing, and enterprise is different. It's a contact sales. It's a conversation with the sales guys, because they're going to ask how big is big, essentially.
Yeah. I think it's from my understanding, it's the same as business. The only difference is the volume and the pricing would be changed, but pretty much.
Well, no. See, so take a look.
Right, the attendees
full featured
are more
PBX business use only. So it's a full featured phone system. Because this is what I saw used at a organization the other day. It's kind of interesting. It's more than full featured because you can turn what it looks like a phone call using a standard poly desk phone that happens to be tied into Zoom,
right?
And you can turn that into a Zoom video conference.
Video call. Yep, exactly. And the thing that's so good about what I wonder is if they should have a small business tier, because small business could use that in a very small numbers kind of way that might be really, really, really powerful for small businesses.
Yes.
What I'm seeing, which is interesting, if you go ahead and
did I stop sharing too soon?
That's okay. Well, if you basically expand it out where it says show detail here, if I expand out the detail of the pro account, which is what I purchased for less than that, it makes no mention of telephony at all.
Yeah.
In this, doesn't say anything about it, which is interesting. Now, I don't know if it's something that I'm grandfathered in because of when I purchased it, or if they were advertising it at the time. But it doesn't say anything about having telephony-enabled meetings. Or
people can still join your meeting by dialing in, though.
Right. I'm making up the terminology here. Zoom didn't bother to list it. Now I don't think it's this where it says the where does it say the full featured
PBX,
right?
That's not it.
That's under enterprise. Yeah, that's under enterprise. If you scroll up a bit, right there. No, scroll down. It depends on your up or down, right?
Right. right.
Just above your mouse.
Depends on if you're a Mac or a PC.
Right.
This is true.
So,
found it.
If you scroll to the top of the page, it lists all of this as Zoom One. So I think to your point earlier, Zoom One is the new branding for Zoom. But depending on the tier of what your subscription is, you get different parts of the package unless it's been sort of thrown in as part of your sign-up bonus.
Interesting. Now, Zoom Phone is its own tier. But what is included in Zoom One, by the way, folks, this is bonus material for you. What is included in Zoom One is not only the Pro account, but also your Enterprise is Zoom One. So, I wonder if we can dig into the settings. We'll have to ask Jeff maybe next week if he can dig in there and see.
To Peter's earlier point is that they've rebranded Zoom Meeting to Zoom One. And you can sort of, depending on the tier you sign up for, you get different elements added in.
Gotcha.
Sorry, Josh, are you on Jeff's enterprise license?
I am not. Well, Jeff has a DVE account.
Okay.
So it's the DVE store
Okay.
account. It's an enterprise account.
Okay, but when you refer to the enterprise account, are you referring to you as an account owner or a license owner?
So I'm simply someone that showed up in this meeting and was given host when I arrived. So I have no attachment to this particular meeting.
Okay, because in the enterprise level, right at the top at the account owner, you can enable or disable dial-in to meeting options.
Yeah,
so it
that's
works the
different
same
than
way as a
telephony. That's simply access to the meeting
Correct.
to be able to hear.
Correct.
But telephony,
Good
I
point.
think, is using being assigned a telephone number
Yeah,
Right.
that you use to make phone calls.
So perhaps then the reason why the enterprise account that I used didn't have it, it could have been disabled.
Correct.
yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Good point. Yeah. What is interesting though, with these rebranding is you have this Zoom One, right? Which is our meetings, chat, phone, and more. And then you have Zoom Events and Webinar is another brand altogether. Now, I'm not sure how the grandfathering is happening or has happened. I know that it seems like going forward, if you buy a Zoom webinar account, it's Zoom Events, which means that's their tier. Where before you had like a webinar license and then you could get a Zoom Events license, and their webinars had,
Well, you can
for
actually
example,
click on the tab and you can see the two options.
this tab.
The one that says Zoom Events Webinar, and you see the two options.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they're
So-
both up to 500 attendees, but they're, as their base number, but significantly different in feature function.
Well, they start at 500 attendees.
Right. But I mean, 500 attendees at 690 versus 500 attendees at 890, it's feature function on the right-hand side that they're charging for.
You're right. That is an
Yeah,
add-on.
so
Yep,
right under the Buy Now button, it tells you it's everything in Zoom Webinars plus.
that's right. Gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha. So I see. They pushed it into this tier, and then they've differentiated it. So yeah, so they're still licensing it the same, and there's I assume this is either legacy or folks that are just like, why do I need this Zoom Events thing? They've got this competitive option here as opposed to those that need the options in the Zoom Events.
Well, I can see that. I mean, in a business environment, if you're doing it mostly inside your business, right? Why would I need the stuff on the right?
Well, and also, Josh, you mentioned this last week, that Zoom Events actually withhold certain things from being able to be done by folks that are doing production style work.
True.
So
if they squash that, then people that were using ZoomISO or Zoom Rooms for contribution would not have an option moving forward.
right.
Josh,
So
if
like
you
you kind of need both tiers.
Yeah, it makes sense.
If you go down the page a little bit, there's a view full plan comparison. Right below, up a bit. Go up, right there. Yeah, so you can see the some of the features. With webinars, you can only host a single webinar session, whereas with Zoom Events, it's multi-day and also multi-track sessions. So even for an internal event, if you're hosting an online event versus an in-person event where you would have breakout rooms and different discussions, the Zoom event gives you a lot more punch in terms of what you can do.
Well, webinar still does not enable breakout rooms.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can have what you call the lobby, and then you can have the keynote presentation in one webinar. You can have breakouts and multi-tracks happening all at the same time with events.
Yeah, but the thing, I looked at webinars last year because once a year I get to run an event for about 500 Boy Scouts around the U.S. And we ended up we needed breakout rooms. We just flat needed breakout rooms. So it was just, okay, I'll up my license on my pro account. And no, I'm not going to do a webinar because without breakout rooms, I couldn't have done the meeting. Unless I had 10 different pro accounts, and that wasn't cost effective because this is out of my own pocket.
Mm-hmm. I wonder, we've talked about in the past, or let me make myself more present. So we've talked about in the past different features that you can kind of simulate a webinar from a meeting. For example, the focus feature. So where you just turn off everyone's cameras except for those presenting. Enabling some of those hacks or workarounds might enable your meeting to be more webinar-like, but still have the availability.
Well, actually, what I've actually done is it's the virtue of having two machines sitting here, which is because I can have 2 pro accounts is still cheaper than a webinar, and have one machine run a meeting. I have 2 meetings running essentially. And my speakers are in one machine that I then tap and pipe it over to the other machine.
There you go. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, you can
which
totally
I think
do that.
which I think, Annie, that's who you're talking about. You've done that. I mean, it works.
Yep.
I mean, it's good use for my M1.
Yeah, having that ability to do a custom meeting is almost requisite that you broadcast somewhere other than your talent meeting, just for the audio sync issues. But yeah. Well, folks, that's all the extra bonus points you're going to get this week. So we'll join you next week for the Zoom Test Kitchen. Thank you for all of our new visitors. And those who may have stopped in, feel free to say hello. You have any questions or problems, please feel free to bring up. And we'll join you next week at our regularly scheduled program. I didn't schedule any outro music, so bye-bye.
I just want to thank you all for making me feel very welcome.